Hello everyone, welcome back to Cars and Kelley. Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I've obviously put a lot of thought into myself, and other people might find interesting as well, and that is just why I bought this car, some of my thoughts about why I gravitated towards this type of car, specifically this car, and what the benefits and negatives have been so far with owning a Mazda Miata. A little bit why my process of narrowing down various cars that I was interested in, and maybe what audience this car would cater to for others. So I'll just be going for a short drive and going over some of those points today. Don't really have any destination in mind, just gonna drive around and see where the road takes us. So anyway, for those of you who weren't aware already, this is a 2000 Mazda Miata. If you haven't watched my video already on the basic introduction, just overview of the car, I'll put that in a link in the description below. But yeah, it's from the year 2000, which is the second generation of the Miata. Pretty similar to the first generation, but just a few cosmetic, interior, and design changes to update it a little bit for the new century. But anyway, this is my first car as well as the only car I've had so far. So I don't really personally have other car ownership experiences to compare it to, but I'll just be going over a lot of why, when deciding what car to buy and factors I was considering, why I ended up choosing this car. I was a high school student, I actually just graduated high school, but I didn't have a huge budget, obviously, to buy a car. Obviously a used car and something for just, a few $1,000s. Nothing obviously very new or in exceptional condition, just with that budget inherently. But there were a lot of options still that I could consider. A lot of recommendations I'd gotten from other people. A lot of things you hear just about, oh, what cars are good first cars to own. So I had to consider all that stuff as well. But being a car enthusiast, I really had some other factors of my own that I wanted to have in my first car, and it was those factors that I eventually ended up prioritizing, and that's why I got this car. So right off the bat, I knew I wanted a car that was fairly small. So I haven't driven that many cars before, but I could tell that I didn't want a too much of a big bulky car. I don't need a whole lot of seats to carry people around for the most part. Of course it has its drawbacks having a small car, but in general I thought I would be able to get away just fine with a smaller car. I eliminated a lot of cars just right off the bat because of that. And I also knew that I wanted something fairly old, from the 90s maybe, or early 2000s, just to keep the maintenance costs pretty low and to be able to work on my car myself. That was another thing I wanted to consider. Was I hadn't had much experience working on cars before, or not really any at all, but I wanted to start to get involved in doing maintenance myself, doing basic repairs and upgrades and stuff to my own car. And it's really a lot easier to do that on older cars before everything became digital and computerized. Everything was a lot more open. The engine compartment is a lot more accessible to the average consumer. So I was looking at older, specifically Japanese, just available cars with available parts and a lot of just ease of access of working on yourself, doing upgrades, and also one that would be pretty reliable and nothing with, notorious reputations for things going wrong. So the Miata has always had a reputation for reliability. Of course, it's a Mazda, the whole brand. Most of the cars they make are just average, regular consumer cars, and they are known for their Japanese reliability. So that was obviously a factor of why I started looking at this car. In the price range and sort of budget and cars that I had already was narrowing down, there weren't actually that many options that fulfilled my criteria, so I didn't have a huge range of things to choose from, because I wanted something small, like I said, something old and reliable, easy to work on, and then of course as a car enthusiast I wanted something that was, had a reputation for being fun and engaging to drive. I didn't care about it being particularly fast or quick or having a lot of power, but more just the subtleties and having a car that was, agile and nimble and fun to drive. And of course, you always hear the word Miata when you hear just fun to drive and simple sports cars. So, of course, the driving experience was something I was heavily considering, and another reason why I gravitated toward this car specifically. A huge thing that I knew I wanted to have in the first car I bought was a manual transmission, a stick shift. I'd learned to drive on automatic, that's what my parents' car was, but ever since driving the first stick shift, actually an old 1989 Toyota pickup truck, I just really loved the level of engagement it provided and just the control you have over the vehicle, over an automatic car. I really appreciated that and all the feedback you can get from having that much control over the gears. That was definitely something I needed to have in my car, was a manual transmission. I wanted something ideally that was rear-wheel drive, and it didn't have to be rear-wheel drive. You know, there's plenty of very fun front-wheel drive cars out there, but in a perfect world, I knew I wanted something that was rear-wheel drive, and also fairly lightweight. Just because this car doesn't have very much power. It just has a 1.8 liter 4-cylinder engine with 140 horsepower, at least 140 horsepower at the time. It's probably lost a few since then, but it only weighs 2,300 pounds. So, you know, it's not a quick car by any means, but it's noticeably faster than, you know, your average just family car, just because of the weight, and it feels very light. You know, it's nimble, the handling is very responsive. It does have power steering, but it's hydraulic power steering before they introduced all of the new, you know, electric power steering in modern cars. So it's not fully, you know, unassisted, just raw steering. It does have power steering, but it still feels very natural, very connected to the road. You just feel very in tune with what the front wheels are doing at all times, and especially because it's rear-wheel drive. The front wheels only have to do the steering, not the drive wheels as well. So it just feels very, you feel very one with the road, and you really know what's going on at all times. So of course, like any car, it's not perfect. The biggest downside is the size, as well as being a positive. Having such a small car really does limit the practicality at times. There's one seat here, so one passenger, and there is some cargo space back here, but the trunk is very small, and you know, there's really not too much space available to carry large items or a lot of people. You are going to have to make some sacrifices to have such a small car. Let's get on the freeway here. So like I said, it's not super fast, not a rocket ship, but definitely enough power to accelerate on the freeway, onto the freeway, passing people. Another downside, and really one of the only downsides I could think of if you're thinking about buying this car, is just what you get for the money. And if you think about, compared to other maybe sports cars or fun to drive cars, it actually could be a pro and not a con what you get for your money. You get a lot of just a lot of car for your money. It's very fun to drive. A lot going for it, really, in this category. But if you do compare it to just any car in this price range, and you don't care so much about those driver characteristics, then you could potentially get either a newer car or a lower mileage car or one in better condition for the same price. So, you know, if you're not interested in the driving characteristics at all, then you should perhaps look elsewhere. It's really easy to heel-toe downshift this car as you're exiting or just decelerating. It's really, the pedals are in a really good spot. You can really get to all three of them very well. The shifter's really easy to operate. It's great for learning how to drive a manual transmission. If you've never driven one before, this is a really easy car to learn on. The clutch is pretty forgiving, pretty easy to press on, and the shifter is very short. You know, the shifts are not super far apart or anything, so it's easy to drive as manuals go. There are some features that you might be looking for. Like, I was looking for one that had the limited slip differential. Not all of them had that. This one does. The special edition has a limited slip differential. That might not matter to a lot of people. It's just a matter of preference, what things you care about more in your car, what things you prioritize. Arrived back home now. that video probably ended up being a little longer than I expected. Sorry about that, but just wanted to give some insight if you're interested in buying one, why you might be, why you might not be, and yeah, just general advice about Miatas in general. And there'll be more to come. But for now, that's been it. This is Cars and Kelley. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll see you next video.